In today's video, we are talking about a zombie outbreak with a strange little twist because these zombies are actually friendly. They just wander around, not hurting anyone, and the government has no idea what to do with them, right up until someone decides to attack. This is, of course, a fictional broadcast, but I want you to imagine it is real from right now until the very end. Also, we are on Spotify, so if you would rather just listen to the audio, click the link in the description. But anyways, let's begin.
Good evening, and we are interrupting our scheduled programming because something is happening across 3 continents right now that we cannot fully explain to you, and I want to be honest about that before I say anything else. My name is David Hale. Beside me is Sarah Donovan. In the last 40 minutes, emergency dispatch centers in Baltimore, in Lisbon, in Osaka, and in a scattering of smaller towns across the American Midwest have logged an identical category of call, and that category does not exist in any manual any of these dispatchers were trained on. The calls describe people who have died and who are now standing up. I am reading that sentence off a verified wire summary from 3 independent agencies, and I am reading it exactly as written because I am not going to soften it and I am not going to embellish it. We have no confirmed casualty figure. We have no confirmed cause. What we have is a timeline that begins roughly 90 minutes ago and a growing volume of reports that are consistent with one another in ways that coincidence does not usually produce.
David, I want to say something to the people who just turned this on. Whatever you are feeling right now, in your chest, in your hands, that feeling is appropriate. You are not overreacting. We have a newsroom full of people who have covered hurricanes and wars and bombings, and every one of us is sitting here with the same tightness you have. So let us be in this together. Do not call your local emergency line unless you have a genuine emergency, because those lines are already saturated and someone with a heart attack needs to get through. Do check on the person next door who lives alone. Do put your phone on a charger right now while the power is on, because we do not know how long that will remain true. And do stay with us. We are going to tell you what we know, we are going to tell you what we do not know, and we are going to be very careful about the difference.
Let me give you the geography, because the geography is the first strange thing. The confirmed reporting clusters are Baltimore, Maryland, Columbus, Ohio, Lisbon, Portugal, Osaka, Japan, Adelaide, Australia, and a rural county outside Wichita, Kansas. Those are separated by as much as 11,000 miles. There is no travel corridor connecting them, no shared water supply, no shared food distributor that anyone has identified. Epidemiologists call that a multifocal emergence, and it is the pattern you least want to see, because it means whatever this is did not spread from a point. It appeared simultaneously in places that have nothing to do with one another. I have a statement here from the World Health Organization issued 11 minutes ago, and I will quote it in full. We are aware of reports of post-mortem ambulation in multiple member states. We have activated our emergency coordination framework. We are not, at this time, able to characterize the agent, the vector, or the risk. We ask the public to avoid contact with affected individuals and to await official guidance." End quote.
Post-mortem ambulation. 2 words doing an enormous amount of work. What that means in plain language is that a person who was declared dead by a doctor is now walking. I have a message here that came into our newsroom from a viewer in Columbus named Marisol, and I want to read it because I think it captures where a lot of you are. Marisol writes, "My grandfather passed on Sunday. The funeral home called an hour ago. They told me not to come. They would not tell me why. I have called them 9 times. Please, if you know anything about the funeral homes, say it on the air." Marisol, I do not have an answer for you. I wish I did. What I can tell you is that funeral homes in at least 4 cities have been placed under a public health hold, which means the buildings are sealed and staff are inside, and that hold came from state health departments, not from law enforcement. I am telling you that so you know your grandfather is not lost. Someone knows where he is. That is not nothing.
We are approaching the 2-hour mark from the first logged call, and I want to walk through that first call because it is the anchor of everything. At approximately 0100 hours local, a night attendant at a medical examiner's facility in Baltimore contacted dispatch to report that a body in cold storage was, quote, knocking. The attendant assumed a mechanical fault. Refrigeration units do knock. The attendant opened the drawer. The subsequent call, and we have the transcript, is the attendant saying the words, "It sat up, it sat up, it is looking at me, it is not doing anything, it is just looking at me." That last clause is the one every analyst in this building has fixated on. It is not doing anything. Because here is what the reports do not contain. In 111 separate incidents logged worldwide in the last 2 hours, there is not one confirmed report of an attack, not one bite, not one act of aggression. Zero.
Zero. David, say that again, because I do not think people caught it.
Zero confirmed attacks, 111 incidents, 6 countries, and the injury count attributable to the Walking Dead themselves stands at 0. I want to be precise, because precision matters more tonight than it has ever mattered. There are injuries. There are 7 confirmed deaths in the last 2 hours. Every single one of them is a human being hurt by another human being or by an accident. A pileup on the interstate outside Wichita when a driver saw something in the road and swerved. 4 dead. A stampede at a transit station in Osaka. 2 dead. And a security guard in Lisbon who suffered a cardiac event. That is 7. 7 people dead, and the dead who are walking did not cause a single one.
I have been on the phone for the last 20 minutes with a hospice nurse in Baltimore who asked me not to use a full name, so I will call this person by first name only, Riley, with permission. Riley has been standing in a parking lot for an hour looking at 14 people who were patients last week, and Riley said something to me that I have not been able to put down. Riley said, "They are not hungry. I have watched them for an hour. Nobody is hungry. They are just standing there like they are waiting for a bus that is not coming." And then Riley said, "I recognized one of them, and I said the name out loud, and the head turned. David, the head turned." Riley said the name, and the head turned.
That is an unverified single source account, and I am going to flag it as such, but I will say that it is consistent with 3 other reports we have received through official channels in the last hour, all describing what one state health officer termed orientation response to auditory stimulus, meaning they hear you or something in them registers sound. We are going to bring in someone who can speak to this with more authority than either of us. Dr. Avery Whitfield is a neuropathologist who spent 11 years studying prion disease and has been consulting with a state health department since roughly 90 minutes ago. Dr. Whitfield, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, and I want to open by saying I have never been less qualified to answer the questions you are about to ask me, and neither has anyone else, so please weigh everything I say accordingly. I have examined imaging from 2 subjects in the last hour. What I can tell you is this. These bodies are dead. That is not a figure of speech. There is no cardiac activity. There is no respiration. Core temperature in both subjects was approximately 54 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly ambient. Blood is not circulating. By every definition medicine has, these people are deceased, and they are standing up and moving with coordinated bilateral gait.
Dr. Whitfield, how is that possible? What is powering the movement?
I do not know. I want to be very clear that I do not know. What I can tell you is what the imaging shows. There is organized electrical activity in the brain, but it is not distributed the way a living brain distributes it. The cortex is essentially silent. The regions that handle language, planning, self, all of that is dark. What is active is the brainstem and, unexpectedly, structures associated with recognition and emotional salience. In a living person, those structures light up when you see a face you love. In these subjects, those structures are among the only things still running. I have shown this to 4 colleagues in the last 30 minutes, and every one of them said the same word, which was no, not as an argument, just no. And then they looked again.
Dr. Whitfield, I need to ask the question everyone at home is asking. Are they dangerous?
Based on everything I have seen in the last 90 minutes, no. And I understand how that sounds. I have watched roughly 2 hours of continuous observation footage of a group of subjects in a secured area. They do not approach staff. They do not react to open wounds. And I will tell you that was tested. because someone cut a hand on a doorframe and bled in front of 4 subjects, and not one of them so much as turned. They do not vocalize. They do not cluster aggressively. They stand. They walk slowly. They stop. They stand again. If you asked me to describe the behavior in one word, the word would be lost.
Dr. Whitfield, thank you. We will come back to you. That was Dr. Avery Whitfield, neuropathologist. Sarah, we are now 3 hours in, and I want to update the numbers because they have moved. The confirmed incident count has gone from 111 to approximately 400. That is not 400 individuals, that is 400 locations. The individual count is now estimated between 11,000 and 14,000 worldwide. And I want to stress the width of that range because it tells you how bad our information is. Confirmed deaths now stand at 31. Every one of them, every single one, is a traffic accident, a fall, a cardiac event, or a crowd crush. 0 from contact.
31 people, and I want to say their circumstances out loud because 31 is a number and they were not numbers. 19 of them died in vehicles, on highways, at night because they were driving away from something as fast as they could. 6 died in a crowd crush at a stadium exit in Lisbon when a soccer match was stopped and 40,000 people tried to leave through gates built for a slow trickle. 4 were the pileup outside Wichita. 2 had heart attacks. David, we are 3 hours into an event where the thing everyone is afraid of has not hurt anybody, and 31 people are dead because we are afraid of it. That is the story so far. That is the actual story so far.
The military dimension is developing quickly, and I want to lay out what is confirmed. The United States Northern Command has raised its readiness posture. 6 states have activated National Guard units, those being Maryland, Ohio, Kansas, Missouri, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Japan's self-defense forces have deployed to the Osaka prefecture. Portugal has mobilized what its statement calls public order elements to Lisbon. Australia has deployed to Adelaide. I have a statement from the United States Department of Defense released 9 minutes ago, and I quote, "Department assets are supporting civil authorities in a containment and observation role. Rules of engagement are strictly defensive. No offensive action is authorized or contemplated at this time," end quote. I want to draw your attention to a phrase in there, "at this time."
I noticed it too. That phrase is a door being left open. David, we have a message I want to read. This is from a viewer in Adelaide named Tomas. Tomas writes, "There are about 30 of them on my street. My daughter is 6. She looked out the window and asked if they were cold. I did not know what to say. There is a woman out there who I think is my neighbor from 2 doors down who died in the spring. She is standing under the street light, and she has been standing there for an hour, and she is not doing anything, and I am more frightened by that than if she were trying to get in. I do not know what to do with this feeling. Tomas, I do not either. I do not think anyone does. But I want you to know that a lot of people are feeling exactly that tonight, and you are not alone in your house with it."
We are 4 hours in, new information. There is a pattern in the movement, and this is the first piece of genuine analysis I have been able to bring you rather than raw reporting. Analysts working with aerial and satellite imagery over the Baltimore and Columbus clusters have plotted movement vectors for approximately 2,000 subjects over the last 90 minutes. The movement is not random. It looked random for the first 2 hours because the individual paths wander. But when you aggregate it and remove the noise, there is a drift. In Baltimore, the drift is southwest at an average of roughly 0.4 miles per hour, which is a slow walk. In Columbus, the drift is east, in Osaka, north. And here is the part that has analysts on the phone with each other right now. When you extend those vectors, they do not converge on a single point. They converge on residential areas. In Baltimore, the southwest vector points at a dense residential district. In Columbus, the eastern vector points at a neighborhood of single-family homes.
They are going home.
I am not prepared to say that.
David, I am. I am going to say it, and you can flag it as my opinion. They are going home. Dr. Whitfield told us the only thing still running in those brains is the part that recognizes faces you love. and they are walking at less than half a mile an hour toward houses. I do not know what else to call that.
I will note that the correlation is real and the sample is large enough to be meaningful, and I will note that we have no mechanism to explain it, and I will let both of those sit next to each other. 5 hours in, the casualty figure has climbed to 68. The composition has changed, and I need you to hear this change. 52 of those 68 remain accidents and cardiac events. 16 are new, 16 people have been shot, not by the military, by civilians. In Missouri, in Kansas, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, private individuals have discharged firearms at figures moving in the dark, and in 11 of those 16 cases, preliminary reporting from local law enforcement indicates the person shot was alive. They were living people, neighbors. In one case in Missouri, a man shot his own brother who had come to check on him.
Please, please, I am asking you as a person and not as a broadcaster, look before you shoot. The thing in your yard has not hurt anyone anywhere in the world tonight. 11 living people are dead in the last hour because someone did not look. 11 families. One of them is a man in Missouri who will wake up tomorrow and every day after and know what he did. Please look, turn on a light, say a name. If it turns its head and does nothing else, then it is not coming for you because nothing has come for anyone, anywhere, all night.
6 hours in, infrastructure is beginning to show strain, and I want to characterize this accurately rather than dramatically. There is no grid collapse. What there is load abandonment. Power plants require staff. Water treatment requires staff. Approximately 40% of night shift personnel across the affected regions did not report or walked off. In Columbus, a water treatment facility is running with 2 people where it normally runs with 11. In Baltimore, a substation went unstaffed, and a fault that would normally be cleared in 4 minutes has been open for 2 hours, and roughly 90,000 customers are dark. That is not the grid failing. That is people going home to their families, which is the most understandable thing in the world, and which is also how a grid fails.
I want to tell you about the 2 people in Columbus because we have their names and they gave us permission. Their names are Quinn and Morgan. They are water treatment operators. They have been at that facility since the first hour. Quinn told our producer, and I am quoting from the call log, there are about 40 of them in the parking lot. They have been out there for 3 hours. They have not tried the door. I checked. Morgan checked. We are not leaving because if we leave, 400,000 people do not have water tomorrow, and then it does not matter what those things in the parking lot do or do not do. Quinn and Morgan are in a building with a locked door and 40 dead people outside, and they are staying so that a city can drink. I do not know what else courage is supposed to look like.
7 hours in, dawn is arriving across the eastern clusters, and with light comes the first clear imagery, and I want to prepare you for what the imagery shows, because it is not what most people have spent 7 hours imagining. There is no horde, there is no charge. There are figures standing in streets, in parking lots, on lawns, spread apart, not touching each other, not moving quickly. In one sequence from Baltimore, a figure has been standing in the same spot on a residential sidewalk for 4 hours and 11 minutes, not pacing, standing, facing a house. The house is occupied. The occupants are alive and unharmed and have been photographed at the window looking out.
Facing the house for 4 hours. David, if that is not a person who came home and could not remember how the door works, I do not know what it is.
8 hours in, and the political dimension has hardened. I have a statement from the White House issued 14 minutes ago, and I will quote it in full because the wording is going to matter enormously in the hours ahead. Quote, "The President has been briefed continuously. The safety of the American people is the sole priority. The President has directed the Department of Defense to prepare a full range of options, including kinetic options, for the containment and neutralization of affected entities. The President wants the American people to know that this administration will not be paralyzed by uncertainty." End quote. The operative words are kinetic options and neutralization. Kinetic means weapons, neutralization means destruction. And I want to place that statement next to a fact. which is that as of this moment, 8 hours in, the confirmed number of living people harmed by an affected entity anywhere on Earth remains 0.
0, 8 hours, 0.
0. The total death toll now stands at 140. All human causes, 91 accidents and cardiac events, 49 shootings by civilians, of which 37 are confirmed to have been living people. I want to say that plainly. We are 8 hours into this event, and the leading cause of death is people shooting other people by mistake.
We are going to bring in someone now who has been standing among them. Colonel Reese Vandermeer commands a National Guard element that has been deployed to the perimeter of the Columbus cluster since roughly hour 3 and has agreed to speak with us. Colonel, thank you.
Thank you. I have about 4 minutes and then I need to get back, so I will be direct. I have been standing about 60 feet from a group of roughly 200 of them for 5 hours. My people are armed. Our posture is defensive. Nobody has fired a round and nobody has needed to. And I want to tell you something that is going to be in a report eventually, so I would rather say it now while it is still true and simple. About 2 hours ago, one of them walked toward our line. 1. Everybody went tight. Weapons came up. I gave the order to hold. And it walked to about 15 feet from a soldier of mine, a 20-year-old, and it stopped, and it stood there. And after a minute, it reached out, and every rifle on that line was on it. And what it did was it touched the sleeve of that soldier's uniform, just the sleeve, the fabric. And then it dropped its hand, and it turned around, and it walked back.
Colonel, what do you think it was doing?
I have had 5 hours to think about it, and I have one guess, and I do not like saying it out loud. That soldier's uniform is the same uniform a lot of people's sons and daughters wear. That is my guess. That is all it is, a guess. But I will tell you that soldier of mine has not been the same for 2 hours, and neither have I.
Colonel, you have seen the language coming out of Washington. Kinetic options, neutralization. What is your read?
My read is that I am a colonel and I follow orders, and I am not going to editorialize about the chain of command on television. What I will say, and I will say it once, is that I have 200 of them in front of me who have not done one thing to one person in 5 hours. And I have a lot of very young soldiers behind me who have their fingers near triggers. And I know which of those two groups I am worried about. I need to go. Thank you.
Colonel Reese Vandermeer. Sarah, that is a serving officer saying that on the record.
That is a serving officer saying that on the record, and I want everyone to hold on to it because I have a feeling that in a few hours we are going to be told a very different story about what is out there, and I want us all to remember that a colonel with 200 of them 60 feet away told us that the thing that scared him was the rifles.
9 hours in, I have new analysis. The convergence pattern I described at hour 4 has resolved further, and it is now unambiguous. Analysts have matched approximately 1,100 individual subjects in Baltimore against public records using facial recognition. Of those 1,100, 962 have been positively identified, and the destination vector for each of those 962, when extended, terminates within 1/4 mile of that person's last known residence. 962 out of 962, that is not a correlation, that is an address.
They are going home, all of them, every single one.
Every single one that we have been able to identify. And I will note that the ones who have already arrived, and there are approximately 300 who have arrived, have stopped. They are standing outside houses. They are not attempting entry. In 11 documented cases, a resident has opened the door. In all 11 cases, nothing happened. The figure stood, the door closed, the figure remained.
We have a message that came in 20 minutes ago that I have read 4 times, and I am going to read it once here. This is from a viewer in Baltimore named Delphine. Delphine writes, "My husband died 14 months ago. He is standing on my porch. I have been sitting on the other side of my front door on the floor for 3 hours with my hand on the wood. I can hear him breathing, except he is not breathing. I know it is not him. I am a rational person. I have a doctorate. I know that whatever is on my porch is not my husband. But he came all the way here. Whatever he is, he walked from wherever he was to my house, and he stopped at my door, and he has not knocked, because he never knocked. He always waited for me to open it. Tell me what to do. Please tell me what to do. Delphine, I cannot tell you what to do. Nobody on this earth can tell you what to do. I am so sorry. I am so deeply sorry.
10 hours in, casualty update, 206 confirmed dead. The composition continues to shift, and it is shifting in an ugly direction. 104 are now shootings, and of those, 79 are confirmed living victims, living people, neighbors, family members, first responders. 22 are what authorities are calling self-inflicted, and I am going to leave that there and simply say that if you are in that place tonight, there are people who want to talk to you, and they are awake, and they are waiting for your call. 80 are accidents, 206 people, 0 of them killed by the dead.
10 hours, 0.
11 hours in, the situation has changed, and I need to slow down and be very careful here, because what I am about to tell you came to us in the last 4 minutes, and it is the most consequential thing we have reported tonight. I have a leaked document. It has been verified by 2 independent sources within the Department of Defense. It is a warning order. The designation is Operation Quietwater. I am going to read the operative paragraph, and I want to be clear that this is a preparatory order and not an execution order. Quote, effective upon receipt, subordinate commands will prepare for coordinated kinetic engagement of affected entities within assigned sectors. Engagement criteria: all affected entities are designated hostile regardless of observed behavior. Rules of engagement: weapons free upon execute order. Objective: total neutralization of affected entity population within continental United States. End quote.
Regardless of observed behavior.
Regardless of observed behavior. Those 4 words are the entire document. What that phrase does is remove the question of what they are actually doing from the decision. It says that it does not matter that they have not hurt anyone. It does not matter that they are standing on porches. It does not matter that Colonel Vandermeer's soldier had a sleeve touched and nothing else. They are designated hostile because of what they are, not because of what they have done.
David, I have to say something, and I am going to be very careful about how I say it. I am not going to tell anyone what to think, but I am going to tell you what I have watched for 11 hours. I have watched 100,000 dead people walk very slowly toward their own houses and stop at the door, and I have watched 206 living people die because of how we reacted to that. And now I am being told there is a document that says none of that matters. I have covered a lot of things. I have never watched a decision get made this way in real time on this scale.
12 hours in, halfway through the first day. I want to reset for anyone joining. Approximately 140,000 affected entities worldwide across now 11 countries. The new clusters are Manchester in the United Kingdom, Marseille in France, Rosario in Argentina, Durban in South Africa, and Cebu in the Philippines. 240 confirmed dead, all from human causes, 0 attacks, 0 injuries from contact. Approximately 400,000 people without power, primarily in Ohio and Maryland, from staffing abandonment rather than physical damage. Air traffic is suspended over 4 metropolitan areas, and a preparatory military order exists that designates every one of those 140,000 as hostile.
We have a message from Manchester. This is from a viewer named Ines. Ines writes, I run a care home. 11 of our residents who died over the past 2 years have come back, and they are in the garden. The garden is where they used to sit. They are sitting on the benches. They are sitting on the same benches they always sat on. One of them, and I will not say the name, always sat on the 3rd bench from the door and would not sit anywhere else and would get upset if someone took it. That resident is on the 3rd bench from the door. The staff have all come to the windows to look. Nobody is scared. Everyone is crying. I do not know what to tell my staff, and I do not know what to tell the families, and I do not know what to tell you. They are just sitting in the garden. They came back to sit in the garden. Ines, thank you for writing. I do not have words.
13 hours in, the order has been signed. I am reporting this as confirmed by 3 independent sources. Operation Quietwater has moved from warning order to execute order. I have a statement from the Department of Defense released 2 minutes ago, and I will quote it. At the direction of the President and in coordination with allied governments, Department of Defense elements have initiated operations to neutralize the affected entity population. This decision follows extensive interagency review. The government's assessment is that the affected entities represent an unacceptable and unquantifiable risk to public safety and public health, and that the absence of observed hostile action cannot be relied upon as a predictor of future behavior. The public is directed to shelter in place. End quote.
The absence of observed hostile action cannot be relied upon as a predictor of future behavior.
That is the sentence, that is the entire justification, and I want to be fair to it because it is not a stupid sentence, it is a real argument. The argument is that we have 13 hours of data on a phenomenon that no one understands, and 13 hours is nothing, and if that population turns, and if it turns at scale, the cost of having waited is measured in millions. That is a serious argument made by serious people who are terrified. I want the audience to understand that this is not cartoon villainy, this is fear, institutionalized, moving at the speed of a signature.
And I want to be fair to the other side of it, because that is my job tonight. The other side is that there are 140,000 of them, and every one of them has a name and an address and somebody who loved them, and 962 out of 962 walked home. And in about a minute, we are going to start shooting them on their own porches while the people who loved them watch through the window.
14 hours in. Operations have commenced. I am going to report this as flatly as I can. Engagements are underway in Baltimore, Columbus, and Wichita. In Osaka, Japanese forces have begun operations. In Lisbon and Marseille, operations have begun. I have initial figures from the first 40 minutes. Approximately 4,000 affected entities have been neutralized. I want to describe what neutralization looks like based on verified reporting from 3 embedded sources, and I want to warn you that it is not what you expect. They do not run, they do not fight, they do not defend themselves, they stand, they are shot, they fall, and the ones next to them do not react. They stand, and they are shot, and they fall.
David?
I know.
David, that is not a battle, that is not a war. I need someone to tell me what to call that, because I have been sitting here for 14 hours, and I do not have a word for it.
15 hours in, and I have to correct my own reporting, and I want to do that transparently and immediately. I told you that they do not react. That is no longer accurate. In the last 30 minutes, in Baltimore and in Columbus, behavior has changed. And I want to be extremely careful with the language here, because the language is going to define how the world remembers this hour. The affected entities are moving. They are moving toward the firing lines. They are not moving quickly. The measured rate is approximately 1.1 miles per hour, which is faster than the 0.4 we measured earlier, but is still a slow walk. They are not vocalizing, they are not running, they are walking toward the guns.
Why? David, why would they walk toward the guns?
I do not know. I have Dr. Whitfield on the line, and I am going to put that question directly. Dr. Whitfield, you have been watching this for 15 hours. Why are they walking toward the guns?
I want to give you the honest answer, and the honest answer has 2 parts, and I do not know which one is true. The first possibility is that this is the aggressive phase, that everything before this was a latency period, and the stimulus of the engagement has triggered a behavioral shift, and that the government's assessment was correct, and we are about to see exactly what everyone was afraid of. That is possible. I will not pretend it is not. The second possibility is the one I cannot get out of my head. 15 hours ago, I told you the only thing still running in these brains is the structure that handles recognition and emotional salience, the part that responds to a face you love. In a living human being, when something happens to a person you love, there is a reflex that is older than language, and the reflex is to move toward it, not away, toward. Every parent knows this reflex. You do not decide to do it. It is not a thought. If that structure is the only thing left running, and if the noise and the light and the falling is happening to the ones next to them, then the only reflex those bodies have left is to walk toward it. I want to say clearly that I cannot distinguish between those two explanations with the data I have. But I want it on the record that I have watched 60 minutes of this and not one of them has raised a hand. Not one. They are walking into rifle fire with their arms at their sides.
Dr. Whitfield, thank you.
16 hours in, casualty figures, and I am going to give you two numbers, and I want you to hold them separately in your mind because they are different kinds of numbers. Affected entities neutralized, approximately 31,000 worldwide. Living human beings dead, 386. And here is the change. 19 of those 386 died in the last 2 hours, and they did not die from accidents, and they did not die from shootings, and I need to tell you how they died. In Baltimore, in Columbus, in Marseille, living people have placed themselves in front of the firing lines between the soldiers and the dead. Family members, 19 of them have been killed. In Columbus, a woman walked into a free fire zone and put her arms around a figure standing on a lawn and would not let go, and was killed by rounds intended for the figure. In Marseille, 7 people linked arms in a street and refused to move, and 4 of them are dead.
I need a moment. I am sorry. I need a moment. I am going to read you a message. It came in 11 minutes ago from Baltimore. It is from Delphine. Delphine wrote to us at hour 9 and told us her husband was on the porch and she was sitting on the floor behind the door. Delphine writes now, "They are coming down my street. I can hear them 3 houses away. I opened the door. He is still there. He did not come in. He did not come in. He just looked at me and I looked at him for a long time. I am going out onto the porch now. I am going to stand in front of him. I am 61 years old and I have a doctorate and I know exactly what I am doing and I know exactly what it will cost. I do not care. He walked all the way here. Somebody should be standing with him." David, we have not heard from Delphine since.
17 hours in, I want to report a development that is now confirmed by multiple sources and is the most extraordinary thing I have reported in 22 years of doing this. There are refusals. Units are refusing to fire. In Columbus, elements of a National Guard battalion have stood down. In Baltimore, 2 companies have ceased fire without orders. In Osaka, an entire company has grounded weapons. In Marseille, French gendarmes have physically placed themselves between the firing line and the affected entities. This is not a mutiny. Nobody is turning weapons on anybody. They are simply stopping. Colonel Reese Vandermeer, who spoke to us at hour 8, has issued a ceasefire order to the entire Columbus sector on personal authority and has been relieved of command as of 19 minutes ago. The ceasefire is holding anyway.
The ceasefire is holding anyway. David, say that one more time.
The colonel has been relieved of command and the ceasefire is holding anyway. Every unit in that sector is holding fire and nobody has ordered them to.
There is a 20-year-old in Columbus who had a sleeve touched at hour 6, and I want to believe that soldier is standing there right now with a rifle pointed at the ground.
18 hours in, operations have been suspended in the American sector. That is confirmed. I have a statement from the Department of Defense released 7 minutes ago, and the language has changed completely, and I want you to hear the change. Quote, Department of Defense has directed a temporary operational pause pending reassessment of affected entity threat characterization. This pause reflects new behavioral data collected during operations. The department acknowledges that no affected entity has engaged in hostile action against any person at any point during this event, including during active engagement. End quote. That is the United States Department of Defense putting on paper that they shot 31,000 of them and not one shot back.
Not one shot back. Not one bit. Not one raised hand. 31,000.
19 hours in, and I have to report something now that I do not have a framework for, and I am going to describe it and let you make of it what you will. In the sectors where fire has ceased, the affected entities have stopped advancing. Immediately. Within 90 seconds of the last round fired in Columbus, the advance stopped. They stood still, and then they turned around, and they walked back the way they came. back toward the houses, at 0.4 miles per hour, the same speed as before. Dr. Whitfield's two possibilities have collapsed into one because a latency phase that ends when you stop shooting is not a latency phase, it is a response.
They only came forward when we started shooting, and they went home when we stopped.
That is what the data shows. 20 hours in, casualty figures, affected entities neutralized, approximately 34,000 worldwide, and that number has effectively stopped climbing as the pause takes hold globally. Living human beings dead, 441. Let me break that down one final time, because this breakdown is the entire story of this day. 182 accidents and cardiac events, mostly in the first 6 hours, mostly people fleeing. 163 shootings by civilians, of which 118 were living people shot by mistake. 61 self-inflicted, 35 killed by military and police fire, and 31 of those 35 were people standing in front of the dead on purpose. 441 people, 0 killed by an affected entity.
0. 20 hours, 140,000 of them across 11 countries, and 0.
21 hours in, something is happening, and I want to report it carefully as it develops. The affected entities are stopping, not dying, stopping. In Baltimore, subjects that reached their destinations have ceased ambulation entirely. They are standing motionless, and Dr. Whitfield reports that the electrical activity that was present in the brainstem has begun to decline. It is fading. Approximately 11% of the observed population in Baltimore has gone completely inert in the last 40 minutes. Dr. Whitfield describes it as, quote, a battery running down, and I want to be clear that this was always going to happen because there was never a power source, and whatever was animating them was never going to last.
They were always going to run out.
They were always going to run out. Dr. Whitfield's estimate, and it is an estimate, is that the entire population will go inert within 12 to 30 hours. All of them, everywhere. It ends on its own. It was always going to end on its own.
David, we shot 34,000 people who were going to lie down on their own.
22 hours in, I want to report what is happening in the streets of Baltimore and Columbus right now, because it is the thing I will remember for the rest of my life. People are coming out of their houses. The shelter-in-place order is still technically active, and it is being universally ignored, and no one is enforcing it. People are going out, to the ones standing on their lawns and their porches, the ones that have gone still, and they are sitting with them. There are photographs coming in from a residential street in Baltimore of a woman sitting on a porch step next to a standing figure with a hand on its arm. There are hundreds of these. In Manchester, the staff of a care home have brought chairs and blankets out to the garden and are sitting on the benches with 11 residents who came back to sit on the benches.
The blankets, David, they are not cold. Everyone knows they are not cold. The blankets are not for them.
23 hours in, the inert percentage has climbed to 34% globally. The affected entity population is winding down exactly as Dr. Whitfield predicted. Governments in all 11 affected countries have now formally suspended operations. I have a joint statement issued 11 minutes ago by the United States, Japan, Portugal, France, the United Kingdom, Australia, Argentina, South Africa, and the Philippines, and I will quote the operative section. The undersigned governments confirm that operations against affected entities have been terminated. The undersigned governments confirm that no affected entity has been documented to have caused injury or death to any person at any point during this event. The undersigned governments acknowledge that decisions taken in the first 24 hours were made under conditions of extreme uncertainty, and that those decisions will be subject to full and independent review. To the families of those who died, we offer no explanation that will be adequate. End quote.
We offer no explanation that will be adequate. That is the truest sentence any government has said all day.
24 hours in, we have reached the end of the first day, and I am going to give you the complete accounting, and then I am going to stop talking, because there is nothing analytical left in me. In 24 hours, approximately 147,000 deceased persons across 11 countries returned to ambulatory function, walked toward the addresses where they had lived, and stopped. Approximately 34,000 of them were destroyed by military and police action. The remainder are going inert on their own, and by this time tomorrow, all of them will be still. 441 living human beings are dead. Not one of them was killed by an affected entity. Every death today was caused by a living person, out of fear, and the largest single category, 118 people, were living people shot by their own neighbors in the dark by mistake.
I want to say what remains, because David gave you what was lost. There are 441 families tonight who will never get an adequate explanation and never should have needed one. There are 31 people who stood in front of the dead on purpose and died for it, and I want to say that they were not fools. They were the only people today who looked at the actual evidence and acted on it. Delphine in Baltimore, who wrote to us twice, is among them, and Delphine's last message said somebody should be standing with him, and somebody was, and it cost everything, and I do not think Delphine would take it back.
What remains, materially? Power is restored to approximately 80% of the 400,000 customers affected, and the rest will be back within a day, because people like Quinn and Morgan in Columbus never left the building. That city drank clean water all day because 2 people stayed. Air traffic resumes in 6 hours. There is no lasting infrastructure damage. There is no lasting economic damage. Physically, the world tomorrow is the world yesterday. Nothing broke. That is the thing I need you to understand. Nothing broke. There was never a moment when anything was actually breaking. There were 441 deaths and 34,000 destroyed, and every bit of it happened inside our own heads.
A colonel named Reese Vandermeer was relieved of command for stopping. Colonel Vandermeer was reinstated 40 minutes ago, and I understand there will be a commendation, and I understand that Colonel Vandermeer has declined it. 2 companies in Baltimore stopped shooting without an order. A company in Osaka put their weapons on the ground. Gendarmes in Marseille stood in front of the guns. It turns out that the thing that stopped this was not a policy, and not an order, and not a scientist. It was a very large number of ordinary people, one at a time, each deciding on their own that what they were looking at was not an enemy.
There will be inquiries, there will be commissions, there will be a great deal of language about the fog of the first 24 hours and about the impossibility of the decision, and some of that language will even be true because the decision was genuinely hard and the people who made it were genuinely afraid and were genuinely responsible for millions of lives. I am not going to stand here and tell you it was simple, but I am going to tell you what the record says, because I have spent 24 hours building that record, and it is the only thing I have to give you. The record says we had 11 hours of perfect data before the order was signed. The record says the data said 0. The record says we wrote down the words, regardless of observed behavior, and then we did it.
I keep coming back to Innes in Manchester and the 11 residents in the garden. They came back and they sat on the benches, the 3rd bench from the door. Whatever this was, whatever force or accident or grace put them back on their feet, it gave them one thing and one thing only, which was the ability to go to the place where they had been loved. That is all they could do. They could not speak, they could not think, they could not remember their own names, but something in them knew the way to the 3rd bench from the door, and they walked at 4/10 of a mile an hour for hours in the dark to get there, and 34,000 of them did not make it because we shot them on the way.
We are told this will not happen again. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows anything about what happened today, including why it happened, including why it stopped, including whether the ability to go home was a gift or an accident or simply the last flicker of a machine winding down. Dr. Whitfield told our producer an hour ago, off air but on the record, and I have permission to use it, quote, "I will spend the rest of my career on this, and I will probably die not knowing. What I will know is that I was asked whether they were dangerous at hour 2, and I said no, and I was right, and it did not matter at all, and that is the part one will not get over." End quote.
Go home tonight. Whoever you have, go to them. Not because of anything I said, and not because of anything that happened today. Just go. Because it turns out that when everything else is gone, when the thinking and the speaking and the remembering are all gone, when there is nothing left of a person at all, the very last thing to go, the thing that outlasts the person themselves, is the direction of home. That was the whole message. That was the only message. 147,000 people walked out of wherever they were and came to say it, and it took us 24 hours and 441 lives and 34,000 of them to hear it.
The sun is up over Baltimore. It is 68 degrees. There are people sitting on porches all over that city with their hands on the arms of the ones who came home, waiting for them to go still, and they are going still one by one, and nobody is running, and nobody is screaming, and it is quiet. This has been What If News. I am David Hale.